Do you believe that Vice President Harris should have created more of a distinction between what she was going to do up against what the Biden administration is doing?
Well, we'll have an opportunity to engage in after-action analysis, and I expect that will happen not just over the next few days, but over the next few weeks and the next few months. It will be required. From our perspective as House Democrats, I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night.
That was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries discussing Kamala Harris's election loss this morning. But just because the New York congressman is choosing to steer clear of some of that finger pointing does not mean that that doesn't exist. Other members of the Democratic Party are doing the same. In a new article from NOTUS, this details exactly who and what more than a dozen Harris campaign staffers, Democratic operatives and strategists, and White House officials are all blaming Trump's resounding victory on last week. And its writer, Jasmine Wright, joins us now. You've been following the Harris campaign. You've been following Harris for years. Yep. It's great to have you with us. And this report is so comprehensive. Yeah. And what stood out to us was this idea that staffers were telling you that this campaign was, quote, broken since the beginning. There's been so much finger pointing at Biden, at other Democrats, at the messaging. But what's so interesting about your piece was it detailed the finger pointing at Harris herself. So what's this all about?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, to be clear, what we heard from Democrats that we spoke to for the piece, yes, they blamed Joe Biden. They blamed him for staying in so long. They blamed his advisors for not understanding the plight that Americans were going through, particularly when it comes to the economy. But they also blamed him for creating a campaign or choosing leadership that created a campaign that was insular, that wasn't open to advice, but also that was built thinking that Biden wouldn't have a lot of enthusiasm or a lot of money. And so it was really difficult to scale up when the vice president came in, and she brought those two things. Also, people said it was a campaign that was staffed by people who were too junior for several roles. And so a lot of criticism was put on campaign leadership from these folks who I talked to, who really felt that the campaign wasn't ready for the type of race, not just to elect Joe Biden, who of course was unpopular, but then to elect the vice president, and felt that she had inherited this kind of behemoth that set her up for failure.
I mean, it was fascinating reading your piece because this is a campaign that raised $1 billion. And in your piece, Harris herself did not know that they actually needed to raise more, that they were in debt.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we have a great topper that looks at this moment where she's reading this fundraising script and she says, we missed our deadline. And then she says, we can't lie to people. And it just shows kind of how in the dark she was, in part because it's 107 days, right? She had to focus on running and being on the road, and everybody else was focusing on everything. But the fact is that they were missing their fundraising deadline. We reported that they missed their September deadline. That was after they revised their fundraising goals because they weren't hitting the projections that they thought they would based on the big money that the Vice President Biden brought in when she initially came into the race. And that was based on a couple different things, in part because they burned through 1 million subscribers to their email list, and therefore that cut off 1 million people from getting asked for money and also volunteer opportunities, the messaging. They were putting too much money into trying to fundraise to get some of that money back. Obviously, $2 going out, only $1 coming in. And then obviously just some of their spending. One person called it basically financially irresponsible what the campaign leadership was doing.
Incredible in terms of that amount of money raised, setting records in that way. Another interesting point in your piece, you talk about multiple people that told you that, quote, black aides felt routinely mistreated and demoralized. I mean, this was the candidacy of potentially would have been the first black woman president.
Yeah, and it seems really kind of concerning that black folks on the campaign were feeling that, but I had been hearing it for months. We had a piece that came out in early September about the fact that the black political class felt that the campaign wasn't spending their money wisely, in a part to tell her story to the community and not using the black political class. And so that's when we kind of started hearing of these concerns from folks on the campaign, feeling very demoralized, feeling mistreated, feeling like they weren't getting really the share of important work or attention that potentially other staffers, potentially white staffers, were getting. And I think that this is just a really constant refrain in Democratic politics of how you treat Black staffers or staffers that aren't just, in the white political class. And we saw it continued here.
Yeah, so many lessons to learn. I know Democrats are going to be reading your piece, as we all have.
They should.
I hope some rest is on the horizon for you, because you have just excelled covering her.
Thank you.
And I know you'll keep at it. So,
Thank
Jasmine,
you.
thank you so much for your time and reporting.